right, welcome to a new edition of the Fifth Down Show as we start season 7 of covering college football and NFL football and doing all the things that we love here. We start season 7 tonight. It is our 7th season of doing all this. We want to thank everybody that's been along for the ride from day one, from the Walrus who was with us, from Victor and Ben who have been with us, from all of our guests, Snowman who has gotten us on the Snowman Media, all the people we have met from there, the Snowman's Army, to No Credentials Required, to Rod Uncensored podcast that we've gone on as we've done Rod and the Lunch Crew. All of that has been leading up to season 7 as we start covering college football. This is the new time slot, 6 p.m. on Thursdays. We will be going live every single week doing with our coverage, doing things the way that we do it. Maybe a new time, maybe a new look to the show, maybe a new ideas that we're bringing to the table, but it will be the same Fifth Down Show. We will be presenting you the same takes we always have on this show. So we thank everybody for being along for the ride. Of course, we come to you on Blog Talk Radio, KJC Radio. If you want to be a part of the program, by all means, call in 646-668-8415. You want to talk anything you want to talk about, whether it's entertainment, whether it's football, whether it's baseball, sports related, not sports related. You want to call up, you want to talk about it. That's what this show is for. That's what we will be doing. But left to our own devices, we will be focusing on football as we normally do. We also have the Facebook group going. So if you're on Facebook, get to the Fifth Down Sports Show. Like, subscribe to Fifth Down Sports. You'll get it. You'll get us every week. You'll be able to check out our older episodes. If you miss an episode, it'll be right there for you. We also have a lot going on. A lot planned for this upcoming college football season, as there are talks in the works with Snowman and I as we look to present a football game, and we will cover a select game each week, each Saturday, with Snowman providing the play-by-play, and yours truly, Fifth Down Sports, will be doing the color commentary on the game. So we'll be talking about all that. Get that going when that gets finalized, when we get everything squared away with that. You'll be able to get that here. If you are following us, if you are following along in the chat, the StreamYard link is there. If you want to join us that way, we are accessible always, all the time. Whatever you want to get in, however you want to get at us. We will go after it from there. But on today's program, we are going all things. We are celebrating the Song of the South, today, as it is all Southern. It is Southeastern Conference. We always say best and worst. Well, we're going to start with the best. And there is no question. If there has been any doubt left over from, I would say, the last 4 or 5 years, if there's any doubt that the SEC is the best conference in football, it's not even close anymore. With back-to-back titles from Georgia, LSU throwing titles in there, Alabama throwing titles in there. There is no better conference than the Southeastern Conference. So we will break down everything you need to know about the SEC, players to watch, draft people to watch. If you're an NFL guy and you're all you're thinking about is your NFL team, we'll give you the NFL draft guys that you need to pay attention to on Saturdays. and we'll get that going. We'll give you the big events that you need to look forward to this week. This upcoming season. So we'll get all of that going. But we also will preview the AFC and NFC South with the same thing with predictions on what we think is going to happen, players to watch, and what to look for each team, and how we do it, how we look to do it that way. So, with that, everything out of the way, let's get down to the start of the show, and let's get to the best and worst. And this is for those of you that are new to the show, this is how we do each and every week. Each and every week, we will bring you the best and worst from college football that we have seen. And when you are looking at the SEC, there's, yes, the best. You could point to the Georgia Bulldogs, and they're two-time national champions. But the reason they are two-time national champions, the reason why Georgia is again the number one team in the country, the reason why Georgia is the team that everybody's going to be gunning for, is they have a guy. And I just want to read his stats off because he is absolutely amazing. For 2 years, this guy has dominated college football. And that is Brock, as I say, the undisputed, in my best Paul Heyman voice, the undisputed, undeniable champion of college football, Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers, the tight end for Georgia, is the best thing to watch in football this year. Not only is this guy a great receiver, this guy is a monster. When he has the football in his hand, he can run right by you, but he can also run you over. That's what makes this guy the best player in college football. That's what makes him, in my opinion, the best player in college football. And when it comes out, I know everybody's going to be looking at, everybody always wants, when they get NFL draft, who's the quarterback that's going to go number one? What quarterback is going to go? Who should we take at quarterback? If you are drafting in 2024, I don't care what your situation is at the quarterback position. The best way to help your team is to take a guy like Brock Bowers, and you can get a quarterback at another time. You can live with a second round quarterback. You can live with another. If you have a guy like Brock Bowers on your team, that will improve your team a lot more than drafting anybody. And that's why I say the best is Brock Bowers. Now, the worst in the SEC, it doesn't change any year. SEC football, Vanderbilt football is atrocious. They are hard to watch. It is hard to watch Vanderbilt football. And so on the field, that is the worst. That is the worst. But we have to go off the field for the worst of the SEC this offseason. And I know it happened before the bowl game, but, this will be the first season without the Pirate down in Mississippi State. And for everybody, anything at Fifth Down Sports, we love the Pirate. We love Mike Leach. I think Mike Leach was the most fascinating guy in football. Most fascinating guy to talk to, most fascinating guy with his thoughts on football, with his thoughts off the field on football. He's just the most fascinating guy. So not having him there is always trouble. And we always go to this. And I know this isn't the SEC, but this was Mike Leach when he was in the Pac-12. But we got to play this clip. So Mike Leach talking about mascots. We can't get enough of it.
Well, first of all, what kind of mythical powers does the Sun Devil have? We got to consider that. I'm going to say the Wildcat's out. The Trojan, does he have a horse or is he on foot? Does he have a bow and arrow or just a sword? The Bruin definitely formidable. Another bear up there, Cal. The tree, I mentioned that trees can get chopped down, unless we're going to go with a bird and somebody might get pecked or something. I don't know. And then the duck might lose interest and just fly away and get out of there, which may be good advice under the circumstances. The husky, no chance. The beaver, well, we'll see how long that beaver can hold his breath. The Ute, again, we're back to, is he on horseback? Does he have a bow and arrow? Did he trade for a rifle? I mean, because if that Ute's got a rifle, there's some definite problems. You'd have to get one of those Harry Potter activists to read up on how you kill a sun devil, because there's a lot of outside stuff there. Just as far as a beast alone, a buffalo's going to be pretty hard to tangle with. I mean, a buffalo's utterly outstanding. Well, but Butch is going to have to be clear-minded and crafty. I mean, Butch will find a way. There's no question. The Cougar will find a way. Clear-minded and crafty, a combination of stay out of harm's way and attack when you get your chances or your openings. Well, first of all,
I mean, that is the quintessential Mike Leach, when you can sit there and take time out of your press conference to break down a battle royale between the mascots of the Pac-12 when he was at Washington State. That is what we love about Mike Leach. Mike Leach was a fantastic guy, not just on the football field as a football mind. I mean, you see all these guys that are running the air raid offense. That's all from Mike Leach. That's all. Mike Leach brought that to college football and accelerated it. And guys like Josh Heupel at Tennessee, guys like, a lot of the guys at a lot of these other programs that you have seen take it to the next level. That was all under the tutelage of Mike Leach. That's all studying his philosophy of football. And, to not have him on the sidelines is going to be it's just going to be one of those things that, it cheapens the life of college football. But, we can't go, we're going to move on, but we'll always be thinking about Mike Leach and what he brought to the game and what he brought to just life in general. The way he went about it was the right way to do it. He didn't take all this stuff too seriously. He wasn't too big for any question. I remember one press conference where he talked about the stars, and he talked about constellations and that kind of stuff. Like, that was Mike Leach. He brought football outside of the game of football, and that was just the cool thing about him. So to not have him there, that's going to be one of the worst things about this offseason for the SEC conference, for the Southeastern Conference. But I got to say, the worst of the worst is, and look, don't get me wrong. Everybody's worth having a redemption story. It's okay to have that as your background, but you know what Hugh Freeze did at Ole Miss was unforgivable. He did some of the worst recruiting practices in the history of college football. And yes, he went to Liberty, and we know what he did there with another guy we're going to talk about later on with Malik, the quarterback, got him to the NFL, and what he did at Liberty was fantastic. But for just a couple years later to be back in the SEC at Auburn, Hugh Freeze, that has to be one of the worst decisions. And it doesn't matter. Wins, losses, doesn't matter. He went about it the way he went about it the first time. Now, hopefully he's learned from that. Hopefully he's not going to make those mistakes again. And we'll see how he does at Auburn. But this has been, it hasn't been that long of a redemption process for me to say, all right, this guy's paid his penance. But he's back in the SEC, back on the sidelines. So we'll see how it goes. But those are some of the things that I'll be looking at. As far as what we got going on in the SEC conference. So as I said, the best, Brock Bowers, the best being the SEC is the best conference in football, and there is no question about this. I've had conversations with guys from the Big Ten, guys that say, "Oh, we got two teams into the." Yeah, that's fine. The SEC has dominated college football for the last decade plus, probably the last 20 years. You could go back probably 20 years, and the SEC has been dominant in football. And you look at the last 5 years; it's just cemented it in everything that's gone on. And you look at that national championship game last year; that was a joke. Georgia absolutely crushed TCU, and you're telling me, all right, well, the Big Ten got two teams in, yeah, and you lost both semifinal games. So, what are you trying to tell me? That having two teams in is better than having a team one team in that wins the national championship? That's not even close. Not even close. And then you look at all the other games that they had, and I just want to look and see if they have it on here. But from the bowl games just last year, you look at all the bowl games that everybody was in. You had Alabama just crushed Kansas State. You had Tennessee that won their bowl game. You had Kentucky in a bowl game. You had Mississippi State, Mississippi, Texas A&M. I think all these teams are just blowing teams. LSU blowing teams away when they play in the bowl games, and it just cements the fact that the SEC is that dominant of a conference. So that's where I want to begin. Best and worst, as we always do. Best and worst. We'll do it every time we do a show. We will have our best and worst segment. So we'll get that in there as we get going here. But let's look to the teams of the SEC, and we'll start on the eastern side. We'll just run down what we think about each team, what you should be looking for, so that you can get a grasp on what to watch for this year. And we'll start right we'll start at the bottom because there's no other reason to start anyway else. But and so we'll start at Vanderbilt, and looking at Vanderbilt 4 wins last year, 1-7 in the SEC. I mean, they finally won an SEC game last year, so props to Vanderbilt for that. As they finally won a game, and not only did they beat Kentucky, but they beat Florida. I was on Snowman this morning, and Playmaker said I need to be nice to Florida. How can I be nice to you when you lost to Vanderbilt? You're the Florida Gators, and you lost to Vanderbilt. Come on. But anyway, what to look for on this team? The biggest guy to look at is Will Shepherd, the wide receiver. He's a talented guy, and he's got great hands. When looking at this guy, is he going to be a first round wide? He's not a first round wide receiver, but he's definitely part of the talent. So So that's why look, the reason why Vanderbilt struggles is because they're not able to get the offensive line. They're not able to get offensive linemen to go to Vanderbilt that can handle the SEC defensive ends. You're not going to get an offensive tackle at Vanderbilt that can handle Harold Perkins, that can handle the Will Andersons from last year, Alabama, Georgia's defensive front. Those kind of athletes are not going to Vanderbilt to play football, and that's why they struggle, and that's why they're always going to struggle. So, but if you are watching Vanderbilt this year, the guy to look at is Will Shepherd, the wide receiver. All right, let's go to the next one. That's when I feel bad doing this every year. And it's every year since they joined the SEC, and I still have no idea why they ever did this. But Missouri. Why is Missouri even in the SEC? They don't belong in the SEC. They're not capable of producing SEC-type football. They never were. They were always a flash in the pan in the Big Ten. Or in the Big 12. Sorry. In the Big 12, I remember, they had their moments with Chase Daniels. They had their moments. They had their moments at times. They were never a big program. And that's why their move to the SEC didn't feel right to me. And it hasn't ever. And you look at last year with 3 wins in the SEC. 3 wins in the SEC. That's not going to cut it. That's not going to cut it for a Missouri team. So if you think Missouri's ever going to challenge, it's gonna be a rough ride for Missouri. So, all right, moving on in the East. This is where it gets tough, and with these the next 3 teams in the SEC East, it's very tough. I'm just going to take them in the order that I think it's going to go, and I mean, the Florida Gators. We talked about this last season. We talked about it all leading up to the draft. Anthony Richardson was a great athlete, was not a great quarterback. So what did they do? They replaced him with Graham Mertz, a transfer from Wisconsin. We've seen Graham Mertz play. Okay, you want to get good. You want to get a good feel of what Graham Mertz is at quarterback. Go watch the Wisconsin game against Notre Dame. I want to say 3 years ago when they played Notre Dame in Soldier Field, and Graham Mertz threw 3 interceptions in the fourth quarter. That's what you're getting from Graham Mertz. He doesn't have a powerful arm. He is not accurate with the football, and he doesn't make good decisions. Those are 3 strikes against the quarterback. Florida is going to struggle this year. And with the schedule that they have at Utah to start the season, look, they lucked out with that win last year because it was at the Swamp. This game at Utah, now they luck out again getting Utah early because we know Cam Rising is still in recovery from his ACL injury in the bowl game last year. But still, the still that's going to be a very tough game to win. It's very tough to win in Utah. So it's a tough start to the game. Then they get Tennessee in week 3. They get Tennessee in week 3. That could be a bloodbath. The way that this defense plays, their secondary, I do like Jason Marshall at corner, and I do like Kamari Wilson, who played well as a freshman last year. But where are they going to get somebody else to step up? That's going to be the thing. Will Jakeem Jackson, a guy they brought in, will he be a guy that can uplift that secondary? Well, he's going to have to battle with Tennessee. So that's where you're going to look to the Gators. If you're looking for strength of the Gators, it's got to be on the defensive side. Their offense isn't going to be able to carry them. And to just look at them, I mean, they don't have a top receiver coming back. They have one returning offensive lineman. This is a complete overhaul in Florida. And that's why it's going to be a much different Gators team than what we're thinking of. So that's where we sit with the Florida Gators. Then we go to Kentucky. And Kentucky just lost probably their greatest Will Levis played fantastic for them, got them to the highest of heights that we've seen Kentucky football get to. And so replacing that is always going to be tough. But I think they did it the right way. I think they did it the right way this year. I love Devin Leary. Devin Leary, a transfer from North Carolina State, was injured, was playing great football last year until he got injured. And so I think they replaced Will Levis with a very competent. I thought Devin Leary, if he had gone to the NFL draft, I thought he would be a pretty high draft pick. I thought maybe second or third round for him last year. If he can prove anything here at Kentucky, he could push himself into a late first round pick. And being a late first round quarterback, that could be his spot. Because I really like Devin Leary. I really like the way he plays the game. I like his decision making. I like his arm strength. So he's got a lot of good things. The problem is Kentucky has got to find a consistent running game. They have got to run the football. If they're going to win in the SEC, They can't win throwing the ball 50 times. They have to run the football. So they have to find a consistent running game. And losing guys like Chris Rodriguez, who was a great tailback for them. They've got to find somebody who can produce on that level for them to be competitive in the SEC. So that's what I'm looking at in Kentucky. And the other team, we're talking about the Fighting Rosas, of course. Justin and Katie Rosa, both alumni of South Carolina. And look, South Carolina is one of those teams. They can beat anybody. They can beat anybody. Why? Because they have Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler is a special kid. We saw it at Oklahoma his freshman year. It has not replicated, since that disastrous sophomore year where he got replaced by Caleb Williams, never recovered from that, transferred to South Carolina, hasn't really done anything at South Carolina. So, but the talent is there. The talent's there in Spencer Rattler. It's just a matter of can he put it together? Can he put it together? The big question at South Carolina is going to be, what do they do on defense? What can they do defensively? What can they do defensively to keep themselves in ballgame? Because you can't win games 56-52. Like that's not gonna happen all too often. You are going to have to you're gonna have games where your offense is not gonna put up 50 points. And you've got to find a way to win those kind of games. So that's what I'm looking for out of them. Now let's get to the big dogs in the East, and that is the Tennessee Volunteers. Now, we know they lost a lot with losing Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman to the NFL. They lost their starting quarterback from last year's roster, starting quarterback. But they do have Joe Milton. Now, Joe Milton's career, I mean, you go back to his Michigan days, he was rough throwing the football. And in this offense, you have to be able to throw the football because Josh Heupel does not want the ball to hit the ground. He wants to go and go fast. And you cannot go fast if the ball's hitting the ground. So he has got to be accurate. He's got to be able the one guy I do like on, we talked about them losing on Brew McCoy is a very interesting wide receiver. He's a very physical wide receiver. And that's what I really like about him. But in this offense, you don't really need to be physical. It's really about running routes, running by guys, running combination routes, and the quarterback being able to fit the ball in. That's my biggest question in Tennessee is, can Joe Milton play that kind of quarterback? But what really gets me psyched about this team is they have a very senior-laden secondary, and that secondary did a great job last year. You watched the Alabama game; they did a great job. I know they gave up a ton of yards, but they made interceptions when they had to. They made the plays when they had to make the plays, and that's the thing to me. I think if Tennessee is going to challenge, what they've got to do is find a way to get pressure on a quarterback. If they can do that, this secondary is very good at picking the ball off. So that's what I think about Tennessee. You already know my theory on Georgia. I said it at the beginning of this. Georgia's the best team. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The biggest question, who replaces Stetson Bennett? And from all looks of it, it's going to be Carson Beck. And I'm just reading up on Carson Beck. I mean, as I said, anybody can play quarterback at this team if they can just throw the ball to Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is phenomenal. Just a phenomenal player. Look, I know a lot of people are saying, well, who's coming back into Georgia? Georgia will run the football. That's what Georgia does. Look at their success. Look how many Georgia backs are in the NFL. That's what they do. They run the football. They run it, and they run it well. They run it better than anybody else. So I don't think that's going to change. Kirby Smart is not going to change to all of a sudden being a guy that, air raid offense. That's not going to happen. Kirby Smart is about playing defense and about getting your defense set. So I think Kirby Smart will be. I think Kirby Smart will run the football a lot in Georgia. I really don't question the quarterback position. I really don't look at it as that's going to be the Achilles heel of Georgia. Will it cost Georgia? Maybe in a big game. But you look at Georgia's schedule. Georgia, I still want to know how they get this kind of a schedule every single year. They never play anybody tough from the West. Let's look at their schedule. UT Martin, Ball State. All right. Who cares? UAB out of conference. Just in the SEC, they start with South Carolina. Not a tough game, especially between the hedges. At Auburn, Kentucky, at Vanderbilt, and then Florida in the world's largest tailgate party. Where are you giving me a tough game in there? They don't have a tough game till November 18th. And maybe November 11th, Ole Miss, but again, it's at home. So that's not a big problem. The biggest game they have is at Tennessee. Because they have to go on the road. It'll be interesting to see what we have at that point. But their biggest game doesn't come until the second to last week of the season. That's baffling to me. And that's why you've got to look at this Georgia team as somebody who as a very big problem. For all of this. All right. Let's move to the Western Division, where it's a lot more in depth, and we'll talk about this a little bit. And it's so tough to rate the SEC West, because when you say, oh, they're the worst team in the SEC West, well, I mean, the worst team in the SEC West is probably still a bowl team. You're looking at probably a 6-6 record, and challenging for a bowl bid. That's how good this division is, and for that, I'm looking at Auburn, and when we talk about Auburn, Hugh Freeze has a lot to do. We saw a lot. We saw a lot of play out of Robbie Ashford last year, as far as the quarterback goes, and we know that Hugh Freeze is a quarterback whisperer. But this guy is a run first guy, so it'll be interesting to see what he can do. What he can do? Will they have a revolving door? We always hear, Steve Spurrier said it the best. If you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one. and that's what's going on here. They have to find a quarterback, and they got to find a guy and stick with him, and that's what will make Auburn viable for this year. But otherwise, I mean, Auburn, I feel so bad for them. They have to play Georgia, Alabama, and LSU every single year. No other team has to do that. And that's scary when it gets to that kind of a schedule. That's scary. It doesn't bode well for an Auburn team that's trying to rebuild. All right. Next on the list, even though I love KJ Jefferson, I think the surrounding the pieces around KJ Jefferson are very hard. It's very hard to like any of the pieces around KJ Jefferson. He will be a guy that I think will get a lot of look, and he's a guy that should get a lot of look for the NFL. He's an NFL caliber player, but he needs to improve his accuracy. He needs to improve on what he can do, and he needs to show that he can play games without getting injured. This guy gets injured so many times. So KJ Jefferson is the guy to watch in Arkansas, but I believe they will be the sixth team in the NFC West. Then it's a toss-up to me, and as much as I love Jimbo Fisher, I've got to put Texas A&M here. One, because I don't trust their quarterback position, but two, because actually, no, I'm going to flip this. But the Texas A&M still, I don't trust their quarterback position, but I'm going to put Mississippi State next. Even though I like Will Rogers as their quarterback, just the transition from Mike Leach's offense to whatever they're going to run now. Are they going to run the air raid? Are they going to switch to a more traditional scheme? We'll see what they have. Now, I like Will Rogers, but I don't think I just think it'll be too much of a transition. So I'm putting Mississippi State next. Then I'll go to Texas A&M, where it's a toss-up between A&M and Ole Miss. And anybody who's listened to this program knows I love Lane Kiffin. I accept Lane Kiffin for what he is. Well, I know he's a troll. If you go against Lane Kiffin, he will burn you. He will burn you, and he'll do it in a funny and in a fun way, and you have to just accept that. If you're not a Lane Kiffin guy, you just kind of have to go, he's a troll. That's what he does, and move on. Like that. That's what you have to do. So that's why I'm putting Ole Miss there. But as they get Jackson Dart, the USC transfer, in there at quarterback. It's his second year in this offense. I think he can be a very viable option for the Rebels. So that's why I put them over Texas A&M, because I have questions at Texas A&M quarterback, at quarterback position in Texas A&M. So as far as everything else goes at Texas A&M, Aeneas Smith is an NFL caliber wide receiver, and he's a great returner. So, I think that will be a good. I think that will be the good spot for Texas A&M. The problem is I do not trust that quarterback position. So we'll see how that goes. All right. getting to the big dogs of the West Division. The West Division is going to come down like it always does. Alabama, LSU, and I'm just looking at where this game is. And last year, it was in Baton Rouge. This year, it's in Tuscaloosa. That gives Alabama the big edge. My guy to watch this year, look, Brock Bowers, best on the offensive side. Harold Perkins on the defensive side is an absolute menace. I watched him play a game where he caused 7 fumbles in one game. That's what this guy does. He is too fast to get around the corner. He is too fast. And I see you, Rod. Rod, are you reporting this that Urban Meyer is, or are you projecting it, or are you reporting this? Because if Urban Meyer goes to Northwestern, that would be fantastic. That would be something. That would be an amazing get for the Northwestern Wildcats. But we'll see what happens there. But Rod, I see you in the chat, and I'll highlight your chat just to put it up there. So we've got Rod saying Urban Meyer to Northwestern. That would be outstanding. And we'll talk about Northwestern when we do the Big Ten. We'll do the Big Ten down the road, but we're talking about the SEC right now. It comes down to Alabama and LSU. LSU had a great season last year under Brian Kelly. Jaden Daniels played a great game of football. He played well. Okay, can Jaden Daniels play that well again? Can he play without making mistakes? That's a big question mark. Guys, the other guy I really like, this LSU team is really fun to watch because they also have, I'm just saying if they have them on here. Yep. Mason Taylor was fantastic last year as a freshman. But he toyed with the idea of transferring, decided not to. What does that do to him in that locker room? What does it do for his mindset coming on the field? We shall see, but he's the reason they beat Alabama last year. Now they got to go to Tuscaloosa to do it. I think that's too much to ask of this LSU team. As we look forward to that, and let's look at Alabama. And Alabama, the rising star, and people, I've had debates with other people about this. I really love Kool-Aid McKinstry. I love him. I think he will be a great player. I think he will be a high NFL draft pick. Come next year. And I love that he can play corner. He can line up a corner. He can line up inside in the slot. He can line up on a wide out and shut them down one-on-one. That's why I love this kid. That's why, and under Nick Saban will find ways to use this kid. He'll find ways to turn the football over. That's what they've always done. That's what they always do. So that's why I really like this Alabama team. And, freshman quarterback Ty Simpson is scheduled to be the starter day one. It's Nick Saban. They brought in Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator from Notre Dame. You look at Notre Dame's offenses under Tommy Rees, they were very, very potent on offense. That was never a problem at Notre Dame. So I don't see that being a problem here at Alabama. So that's what I'm going there. Defensively, we all know, I just said Kool-Aid McKinstry. I think he will be a high draft pick. Now, what that means, what high level draft pick means to you, when you're talking defensive player, I don't know. I think right now I would slot him in the top 15. I really love this kid, and I think he can really be a great kid. So that's who I'm looking at. So I'm looking at Alabama, Georgia in the SEC championship. I think. Look, Georgia has played so many games that, remember, the last game they lost was not last season, was the 2021 season when they lost the SEC championship to Alabama. I think we get a repeat of that. And this year I think it ends up being both teams getting into the college football playoff. I think Alabama and Georgia will be there in the SEC championship game. So that's what I'm going with. Now, as far as guys you want to look at, as far as unknown guys, Juice Wells, wide receiver at South Carolina, could be, if South Carolina has a good season, it's going to be because Juice Wells is having a good season, and that could bump him up in the NFL draft. Mekhi Wingo, defensive end at LSU. I love the LSU defense. They're going to be fun to watch. And with Harold Perkins, with a lot of attention going to Harold Perkins, you could see a big year out of Mekhi Wingo up front. So just looking at some of the other big name guys, Nazir Stackhouse, defensive tackle for Georgia. We all know what Georgia can do on the defensive tackle side. So that'll be something interesting to watch. Those will be the kind of guys that I'm looking at. Those are the kind of guys. So that's my SEC preview. My SEC preview tells you that I've got Alabama over Georgia in the SEC championship game. Both teams finishing 13-1. I think both teams finished 13-1, and we see and we see both teams making the college football playoff. That's the SEC. Tell me what you think in the comments below. If you're watching this, tell me what you think. Tell me where I got it wrong for your team, and we'll see how it plays out during the year. But that's what I got going on. All right, let's move to the NFL, and we'll start in the AFC South, where I had a debate 2 weeks ago with a certain Eagles fan who decided to call me out on the mat on the Snowman Show, and question when I broke this down. When I break this division down, first off, it's between the Jaguars and the Titans. That's it. It's gonna be Jaguars, Titans. The Houston Texans, although they had a great draft, I still don't think they have enough pieces. I'm not a big, as I said, I'm not a big fan of CJ Stroud. I'm a fan of watching him prove me wrong. I said this in the lead up to the draft. I said, I love watching Josh Allen play in Buffalo. Why? Because I took Josh Allen to the mat. I said I did not believe in Josh Allen. So everything he does is proving me wrong, and I love it. I love him for it. Same thing with CJ Stroud. Do I want him to fail? No, I don't want him to fail and me to say, look what I said, I was right. I would much rather come on here and say, I was wrong, CJ Stroud is great. I just don't think it's there. I just don't see it. So I think it'll be a while for them to get going. Houston is in the right direction, but they have a long ways to go. Indianapolis, I can't say the same thing. Anthony Richardson, I said this. I've said this a bunch of times on about Anthony. When he completes a pass in Indianapolis, it'll be breaking news because he struggles throwing the football. He is an immense athlete. There's no question about that. But his ability in the NFL, the ability to throw the football trumps your athletic ability. That you have to be a great passer first. And when I look at this Indianapolis team, if we did a best and worst, the worst is, what is Jim Irsay doing? Why would you come out and slander your best player in Jonathan Taylor? Why even throw him under the bus? Why even say, well, we're not going to pay a running back? Like, why not just say, hey, we're going to evaluate it. We're going to evaluate it when the situation comes. We are going to take a look at it. Why not be political about it? You don't have to throw him under the bus and make him really not want to sign there, really not want to play there. Like, why would he want to risk injury behind that offensive line, which got him hurt last year? Why would he want to risk that? And so the Colts and the Texans, it's going to be a long year for those two. It comes down to Jacksonville and Tennessee. And it comes down to whether or not you believe. Look at what Jacksonville did last year. Jacksonville was a Jekyll and Hyde situation. The first season, you saw Mr. Hyde. They were a terrible football team for the first month of the season. For the first month of the season, they were atrocious of a football team. Then they started to figure it out. They started to turn it over. They started to, get into a groove, and they were able to ride that for the rest of the year. Well, a lot of those guys that put up the numbers that they did last year, a lot of those guys put up career numbers. Those are numbers that they did not put up previously. So you're counting on guys to again meet career best or exceed their career best. And that's hard to ask of people. Now, that's why I say Jacksonville, I think Jacksonville comes back down to earth a little bit from where they were, even in the playoff game. They were down 27-0 at halftime. I mean, that says a lot about, now Jacksonville was able to come back, and fantastic on them. But what if that team what if the first half team, what if that team shows up? If that team shows up, they're going to get beat by anybody. Anybody can beat that team. Now, that team that showed up in the second half, they can go out and beat it. They can beat anybody on their schedule. However, they have a very tough schedule. I remember looking at it. They play Kansas City, Buffalo, New Orleans. They play a lot of tough games. A lot of their tough games, and a lot of their toughest games are on the road. And that's not a good thing for this Jacksonville team. A lot of their tough games last year were at home. And so when they got to play their tough games, they got to play their tough games at home. Now they have to do that on the road. That's a totally different ask for this Jacksonville team. And that's why I believe in this Tennessee team. Now, a lot of people have come out and rightfully said, who's going to play quarterback? Look, Ryan Tannehill is a serviceable quarterback. I'm not going to come out here and say Ryan Tannehill is an elite quarterback. He's He's a guy you can count on. No, he's a serviceable quarterback. When you have Derrick Henry, when you add DeAndre Hopkins, when you have weapons around the quarterback, when you have weapons, well, the quarterback doesn't have to do everything by himself. He just has to do two things: move the football and don't turn it over. That's it. If Ryan Tannehill can do those two things, I think the Tennessee Titans can be really good this year. And I'm going to put them, I was on the corner booth. Well, I wasn't on the corner booth. I was in the chat on the corner booth when they were doing their wins and losses. And I believe Tennessee is going to be at 11 wins this year. I think 11 wins and they win the division. Why? Because I have them at 10 wins going into that final game. And everybody wants to point to, well, Jacksonville won the last game last year. Again, that was in Jacksonville. It was the last game of the season in Jacksonville. This time, the last game of the season is again against Tennessee, but this time it's in Nashville. And I've heard people say, well, home field doesn't really matter. Home field makes a big difference. Why do you think teams play their rear ends off to get home field advantage in the playoffs? You want home field advantage because home field matters in football. It's one of the only sports where home field matters. It makes a big difference. I had somebody tell me home field doesn't mean a thing. If it didn't mean a thing, Vegas wouldn't adjust their scores based on home and away. They wouldn't give the home field a bonus 2.5 points. If they didn't believe home field, if home field didn't matter, they wouldn't be doing that kind of stuff. So home field does matter. It matters in these situations. It matters in a lot of these. So that's why I'm looking at Tennessee to be. That's why I'm picking Tennessee to win the AFC South this year. All right, let's go. Let's go to the NFC South. Now, the NFC South is two teams are very interesting. And I don't think necessarily they're going to be the top. Now, Carolina, great pick of Bryce Young. I can't wait to see what Bryce Young does in the NFL. I just don't think the pieces are around him in Carolina to make that kind of a push. I mean, Miles Sanders is a great piece, but when have we ever seen Miles Sanders be the lead running back? And I mean the lead as in we've always seen Miles Sanders get the ball, get it down inside the goal line, and then never touch the football again. That was kind of his life in Philadelphia. So I think he can be a good piece. But who's Bryce Young throwing the football to? That's a big question in Carolina. So Tampa Bay with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield taking over for Tom Brady. You know how I feel about if you followed this program. Our first season we did so much on Baker Mayfield. We talked about Baker Mayfield for a lot. I've always loved Baker Mayfield from his Texas Tech days. I've loved Baker Mayfield. I love what he brings. The question, the problem is on the football field, he is as up and down as you can be. Up and down. He'll have great games. He'll have terrible games. So the inconsistency is what worries me about Baker Mayfield. And with that offensive line, with the injuries they had last year, I think Tampa Bay struggles. I think they struggle. But we all know Tampa Bay has the weapons. Mike Evans physically is one of the most talented guys in the league. Why he has so many drop issues, I have no idea. A guy like that should not be dropping the football the way he does. All of the kind of assets that Tampa Bay has. They have a lot in place to do a lot of great things. I just don't feel them this year, so I'm not too worried about them. I like what Atlanta's doing. Now, again, question mark at the quarterback position, Desmond Ridder. I think they need to turn it over to Desmond Ridder. And they need to say, Desmond Ridder, this is your team. We brought Taylor Heineke in here in case you go down for injury. He's not here to steal your job. This is your team. This is your game. Now take it and run with it. That's what needs to happen for Atlanta. I think Atlanta has a lot of great pieces. I love Drake London, the wide receiver from USC. I love Kyle Pitts, the tight end from Florida. I would like to see them run Kyle Pitts more as a wide receiver than as a tight end. I think that would improve Atlanta a lot if they can get that done. And I also like the draft pick of BJ Robinson. I think that helps this team instead of having Cordell Patterson as your running back. As I've said, he is a wide receiver that can't catch the football. That's why they had to put him at running back. So, but now you have a real running back in Bijan Robinson, the draft pick out of Texas. I like what Atlanta's doing. They need upgrades on defense. They need to have get some great plays on defense. They need somebody to step up on that defense. But offensively, I like where they're headed. I want to see what Desmond Ridder can do. We saw what he did in Cincinnati at the collegiate level. Let's see the progression at the NFL level. That leads us to our last point here. And I'm sure Dutch is loving what the Saints are doing. I love the Saints this year. I love what the Saints are doing. I looked up. Look, the Saints. Not only do they draft A.T. Perry, who I love. I love A.T. Perry. I love them at Wake Forest. I love what he did in the draft process. I have no idea why he fell so far in the draft. It's still one of the question marks that I have. Why he fell so far, I can't answer that question. I've loved this kid. I've loved that kid at Wake Forest. I love what he can bring. He's 6'5", 230. You just put him on the outside and let him cook. And that allows you to move guys like Chris Olave, who should have been the Rookie of the Year last year. He got robbed of Rookie of the Year. I don't know how. I don't know how he didn't get Rookie of the Year, but he didn't. He should have got Offensive Rookie of the Year. So you can move him inside. Mike Thomas, you can move inside. And also, I saw that undrafted, they signed a guy from South Carolina State. Now, if you want to look up Shaq Davis, you want to see what Shaq Davis can bring, go watch the Celebration Bowl from 2 years ago against Deion Sanders' Jackson State team. He ate them alive in that Celebration Bowl. And the one game I saw him play, I saw him last year against South Carolina, and he was able to dominate that game. This is a guy who he can play at a high level. I have no idea how he went undrafted, and now that he's a Saint, you line up Shaq Davis on one side, A.T. Perry on the other. You let the other two, you let Mike Thomas and Chris Olave work the middle of the field. You've got a competent offense. All you've got to do is find – now, I know they're going to struggle because Alvin Kamara is suspended and all of that and everything. That is Alvin Kamara's head really in football because of all the ish going on off the field? I don't know. I don't know what you're going to get out of Alvin Kamara this year. Are they going to sign up a guy like a Dalvin Cook? Are they going to sign? I know they just had a meeting with they just had a meeting with a big running back, free agent. So are they going to bring in a free agent guy, or are they going to try to ride this out? I don't know. If I were them, I'd be bringing Dalvin Cook in immediately. Guys like Ezekiel Elliott are still out there. He could help the Saints. But Derek Carr, a lot of people want to throw shade at Derek Carr because of what happened in Las Vegas last year. Las Vegas, Derek Carr was not the problem in Las Vegas. The problem was nobody trusted. They didn't trust him to power that offense. And when they did, you saw what he and Devontae Adams could do. They did great things. And there's a reason why Josh Jacobs led the league in yards. The reasons why that is because Derek Carr was throwing the ball all over the field, and teams couldn't load the box against Josh Jacobs. Now, and this year you give Derek Carr a 4 wide receiver spread that he now has an opportunity to pick the best matchup and throw the ball to that guy. He's going to be okay. I've got the Saints at 12 wins this year. I think they get 12 wins. And I think they dominate this division. I think they dominate this division. All they have to do is play a little bit of defense. I'm not asking them to be the Greg Williams, Jonathan Vilma defenses of that we've seen. I'm not asking them to be the sack lunch team of Sam Mills, Vaughn Johnson, Ricky Jackson, and Pat Swilling. I'm not asking them to be that Saints defense. Just be competent on defense. Just have a little bit of defense, and the Saints should be fine. So that's what I'm looking at in this division, and those are the guys that I'm looking at. Like I said, I think the wide receiver core in New Orleans is stacked. It is stacked. And there's no reason why they should ever not be in shotgun 4 wide receivers. There's no reason for it. And even if you want to bring a tight end and run 4 wide and a tight end, that's fine. They should always have 4 wide receivers on the field. That should always be happening, because that team is way too talented at the wide receiver position for anybody to stop. You can't stop them all. You got to pick a guy and shut him down. And it's up to Derek Carr to figure that to figure out which way to go with the football. But I think the Saints will be the most dominant team in the NFC South this year. So recap, I've got Alabama winning the SEC. I've got Tennessee winning the AFC South, and I've got the Saints winning the NFC South. That's my preview, guys. That's what we talked about. If you have any thoughts, anything, leave it in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, do all that stuff, and we'll get back at you next week with another preview, another college conference, and we'll do another NFL. So what we're going to do is we're going to stick with our theme. We've got when we do the NFC and when we do the East for the NFL, we'll do the ACC. So we'll do them together. When we do the West, we'll do the Pac-12. When we do the North, we'll talk about the Big Ten. So that's our schedule. Excuse me. That's our schedule going forward. I'm working on getting some people on for our certain divisions. I'm gonna put the plea out there for the West. When we're talking about the West, we're talking about the 49ers. So I'll work on getting Niners Faithful in here to give us the lowdown on the 49ers. And we'll get all of that going when we talk about that. But that'll come when we have the East and we talk the ACC. We're gonna talk. I got my boy Krawczyk, one of the best guys I know who follows recruiting better than anybody I know. So we'll bring him on to talk ACC. He's also a Commanders fan, so we'll get him to talk ACC and NFC East. So we'll do all of that. Sunday we'll have a new Summer of Greatness. We're continuing the Summer of Greatness on Sunday, so we'll get that. We'll get a new topic there. Working on some stuff for that, but we'll get that going. So thanks, guys. We will. Those are my thoughts. Again, Alabama, Tennessee Titans, and New Orleans Saints. Those are my champions from these divisions. We'll talk to y'all next time.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I've ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.